Welcome to the Well-Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. This is Season 15, Episode 10. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Jessie-Sierra Ross, a cookbook author, TV personality, and the talented blogger behind Straight to the Hips, baby. A former professional ballerina from Boston, Jessie traded her city life for the serene farm-to-table landscape of Western Massachusetts. As a self-taught cook and passionate home entertainer, she brings her artistic eye to her light and bright food photography and a recipe approach. Known for her step-to-step cooking demonstrations and lush floral touches, Jessie-Sierra shares her easy elegance with a wide audience. In her latest book, Seasons Around the Table, published by Schiffer Publishing, Jessie offers a comprehensive guide to crafting exceptional gatherings at home. The book features seasonal menus, original recipes, stunning floral table decor, and home entertaining tutorials. With regular appearances on CBS, NBC, and PBS, Jessie has become a sought-after expert in food and home entertaining. Whether it's through her blog or television appearances, her goal is to empower home cooks to create memorable food experiences for friends and family. Seasons Around the Table is available now on Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, and other retailers. You can follow Jessie-Sierra on Instagram at Straight to the Hips Baby to subscribe to her weekly newsletter, Jessie-Sierra, The Last Bite, on Substack. I'm now going to take you to my conversation with Jessie-Sierra Ross. Welcome to the podcast. Today I'm speaking with blogger Jessie-Sierra Ross to talk about her new book, Seasons Around the Table. Jessie-Sierra, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Jessie-Sierra, for our listeners, can you tell us where you're from and where you live now?
Absolutely. So I am a born and bred Bostonian. I only turn the accent on occasionally, but if you ask nicely, I might start rolling it out. But yeah, so I grew up in the heart of Boston and lived there for many years until I started my family and I moved out to Western Massachusetts to the foothills of the Berkshires, which is a very agricultural area, rich in just amazing food culture and culture in general.
I want to talk about your famous and well-known blog, Straight to the Hips Baby. Can we talk about how this passion for cooking evolved over time and how you got to start the blog?
Absolutely. So I, like many of us, started learning how to cook the fundamentals at, our parents' side. I was my mother's right-hand little girl, and I was there because I had a fascination with cooking from, making chocolate chip cookies and seeing how the basic ingredients come together to this amazing treat, to doing more of our ethnic cuisine of kugels and blintzes and things that required a little bit more time. And I'll say my little fingers getting burned on crepes. But it was something that I loved, and it was a way for me to connect with my family, my culture, but also food as love. And food was always kind of a double-edged sword for me as well because I was a professional ballerina for many, many years, but it didn't stop my passion for food. So after years on stage and in the theater, I semi-retired to start a family and suddenly had all the time in the world. And I had a baby and a toddler kind of jibber jabbering in each ear. And it was the first time in many, many years that I wasn't working. So I needed to do something. I needed
Yeah.
an outlet. And I created this blog and dove into cooking, teaching myself to cook, how to create home entertaining experiences, and realizing that there was a real gap in the market for well tested, well explained recipes. Because in my dive to learn to cook, many times I was a recipe failure. I couldn't get that recipe to work from my favorite blogger or my favorite cookbook. And it wasn't because it was a bad recipe or that I couldn't follow directions, but there was an assumption. There's an assumption that everyone had that basic skill level to know what a roux was, or when it's, ready to start pouring in the milk, or, what is that froth on top of a gin sour? Should it be frothy and light? Should I use a raw egg? And realizing that there needed to be more of a voice out there to teach those who were still very much learning. So after one very successful Thanksgiving dinner for 16, instead of emailing my recipes out to everybody at request, I said to my husband, I'm going to start a blog. I want an outlet. I want to reach the outside world. I want to share. And Straight to the Hips Baby was born around the dinner table.
It's a beautiful blog and it's really very well done. Do you get a lot of feedback from people that are fans of your blog?
Absolutely. I I started the blog as a hobby 10 years ago, but it went full time into my full time business about 4 years ago. And particularly over the pandemic, I was hearing back from fans who, longtime fans, as well as newcomers who had, again, the time finally, and the space and the interest to cook. And it was also a need. I mean, let's be blunt, we had to cook for ourselves. And people would cook through my entire index, and there is several hundred recipes on that blog,
Yeah.
ranging from, the fancy and the complicated to my mainstay, which is comfort, step-by-step recipes, meals that feed you but also feed your soul. And the feedback was exceptional, in particular because of our photographs, which show not only a finished, what they call a hero shot, the finished plated beautiful shot, but also our step-by-step photographs, which are very handy for a visual learner like myself. And there's many more of us out there who would love to see, when a dough is ready, after that second rise, what do you mean it should be indented? How much of an indent? And we would show that. So lots of great feedback, not only from readers and viewers when we started going into our television work, but also from those in the culinary world who saw what we were doing and realizing that this was a great way to engage a broader audience.
Where did the I want to talk a little bit in the book and in the blog. You show this a bit, but for the listeners, I kind of want to highlight this because this is a big part of it. Where did the intersection for food and flower arranging and kind of design come in?
Fabulous question. So I'll give you a little family story. I am a third generation gardener and lover. My grandmother, who immigrated from Ukraine, had a neon green thumb. Neon, spectacular. She moved to New Jersey after World War II as a refugee and had a postage size stamp garden. But in that garden, she grew fruit trees and roses and grapes and berries. And, these roses were the size of dessert plates. She was magic. And my mother, the same idea. In the city of Boston, she created a garden out of dirt and rock. And so, even though I was a city kid, I knew where my food came from. So, when it came about to kind of creating my blog style, my recipe style, and also this book, I knew I wanted to bring those trace elements of my past because they're such an integral part of me and how I truly entertain at home, how I live my life. And realizing that flowers are an easy and adaptable way to elevate any table or to elevate any recipe. So there's a lot of talk in the book about edible flowers, food safe flowers, but also flowers and herbs you can grow at home, where to resource them, and how to incorporate the beauty of nature on your table, because flowers are truly the most accessible way to bring, the seasons to our table, into our plate.
Your new cookbook, Seasons Around the Table, came out in October.
Mhm.
Where did you, at what point in your life did you decide after writing the blog that you wanted to do a cookbook? Had this been well, not a cookbook, but a cookbook entertaining book, let's say, because it's not just a
Mhm.
cookbook. There's a lot to unpack here. Where did the idea of it come? Did you always want to do this, or did just one day you thought, I could take this from what's in the blog and I could translate this into a cookbook?
It was a work in progress. So I had been doing these events in this fashion for many years and sharing, amongst my readers. But the book idea came about when Schiffer Publishing approached me for another project, um, a book that sort of started in the garden, and I pitched them this idea that I had been mulling over for 5 years. All through the pandemic, I had wanted to write a book, and I was learning from other people how to write a book, who to talk to, how to find an agent, how to do the whole thing. Because as a ballet dancer, this is a completely foreign world. I'd never even thought to write a book until that time when I had the space. And the idea came because it's creative. It's a fun way to incorporate so many different elements of not only gardening and home entertaining and cooking, but we're getting into the lifestyle niche, we're getting into interior design, we're getting into folks who enjoy photography as well, obviously, as cooking, which is the base of this book. And I realized when I was out and about in bookstores or online, there wasn't anything like this. And there needed to be something like this. I wanted to create a book that was not only useful, but also beautiful enough to keep on your coffee table. I don't know if you're like me, where I'll read cookbooks like magazines. I just love them.
Yeah, I
And
do.
I may not always cook from them, but I get a lot of visual inspiration and flavor inspiration. And I wanted to create a book that would be accessible, attractive, but also welcoming to a wide swath of different people.
I really liked the way the book was set up through the year. You start off in spring and you go through late winter, and it's built around kind of the wheel of the year and the seasons. And it's not specifically built around specific holidays, but kind of like the seasons. How did you kind of think to arrange the book, and how did you think to prepare it?
Excellent question. So when I started to pitch the concept, it seemed to me that seasonal eating, the way that I eat at home is through seasonal eating. I am fortunate enough to live close to the producers, so I can hop to the dairy farm for my cream, or I can run up to the orchards for pears and apples in the fall. And our area is known for asparagus, actually. So in the springtime, everything is asparagus. Um, and I think it's something that more people should embrace. And knowing that when we eat seasonally, we're not only helping the environment and our local businesses, but we're also getting the best product, the best flavor, the best sort of elements during their growing season. So when I started thinking about it, I realized very quickly that I wanted to utilize the sort of growing season generally and adapt it to holidays or events. And as you mentioned, they're loosely themed because I understand that people want to have the flexibility to use, say, I think there's a spring blossom dinner in there. You could use that for a Passover or for an Easter, or you could just do it because you want to get together with your friends. There's a summer solstice party in there that could be easily a garden party or a wedding sort of event. So for me, I created these menus loosely around these holidays, including like a Mother's Day brunch, a baby shower, strawberry season. But then we get more specific in the sort of holiday time of Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, so that people would have ideas. They would have a go-to for not only menus and recipes that were seasonally inspired, but also table scapes that reflected the colors, the feeling, the mood of that particular time of year or that holiday. And it just, for me, I'm very, I'll say I'm very creative, I'm very visual, but I also very linear. This is how my mind works. It's like a
Yeah.
calendar year. I need to, I like to see the run up so that I can flip through the pages and say, oh, I'm actually looking for something for 4th of July, but maybe it's not 4th of July, but I still have all the ingredients for 4th of July. What am I going to use? And there's like a fireworks barbecue in there. And so it's adaptable. People can take what they want from it, use it as a blueprint, and also build on it.
I really love that the book is beautiful and all the food in it looks elegant. However, it's also very accessible and very stress free. I found you really have a kind of aim to make this something where the stress is being taken off of the entertainer. Can we talk about that a bit?
Mhm. So oftentimes I have found for myself in my sort of 10 years of home entertaining and cooking, um, I was stuck. I was stuck in the kitchen. I was not with my guests. I was not eating my food hot. I was lucky to get a glass of wine at the end of the night. And I didn't like that. I mean, I
Yeah.
love my love language is making food, making these food experiences for my people, but I want to be participating in it too. So I started streamlining. I started streamlining my menus, my cooking, my home entertaining philosophy to embrace more of a modern perspective. So we're taking everything that's beautiful about those dinner parties and events of old, the parties that our great grandmothers may have held with, multiple pieces of cutlery for each course and 3 different wine glasses and I mean, just a ton of food, but we don't live that lifestyle anymore. We oftentimes don't have help in the kitchen. It's, the host or hostess doing all the work. Um, and I don't think we need to host in that fashion anymore. If we can provide amazing, fancy but not fussy foods, delicious cocktails, a beautiful table, and this sense that you're welcoming your people into your home, not only for dinner, but for a pause. You're pausing the world around you so that you can connect with each other over that table, and those guests will remember this experience for years to come. I have members of my family and friends who will still talk about, the Thanksgiving or Christmas dinner I held 10 years ago because it was a moment in time that was beauty, It was food that was delicious, but it was good company. And so I want people, and I lost the thread. Repeat the question. I told you I was a chatterbox.
No, no, totally good. No, basically,
Um,
we're talking about how your everything in the book is very elegant, but at the
oh,
same
yes.
time, you work to make it very stress-free.
Very good. All right. So the elegance, thank you for the reminder. So my years in theater and in ballet really honed my eye for detail, but also there's a repetition. So I can go to the bar and perform a rond de jambe or a frappe or a développé thousands of times over my life, but every time I do it, it's slightly different. It's slightly more refined, it's slightly cleaner. It's still the same movement, but I'm finding new elements to prepare and to showcase. And just like a performance on stage where, if I'm going to get out there and perform 32 fouettes that night for an audience where I have their attention, that moment will never happen again in that fashion. The same is said for a dinner party or for any event. So I wanted to make sure that I had a menu or a table plan that could be repeatable by someone, could be refined and built on by someone, but not be so complicated and fancy that it was so fussy that you felt intimidated. So it's all about approachability, accessibility, and being able to understand that it's like rote. Once you get the formula, you'll be able to do this on your own and take inspiration from what I provided you, but you're going to find your own inspiration out in your world.
As a novice flower arranger and somebody who is just dipping my toe into making cocktails, I found a lot of the book very much speaking to me. Can you
Mm,
talk about how you kind of created a lot of really good information for people that are kind of starting out in this?
absolutely. So on the cocktail side, I started creating cocktails very early on in my blog sort of life because I had visited different restaurants and bars and I'd always felt that the liquor was too forward. I didn't want to have, I wanted something that was balanced. So I'm known for my balanced cocktails where you'll have floral, you'll have sweet, you'll have the actual liquor, you'll have interesting notes from infused simple syrups. And I realized as I was creating these recipes, any home mixologist can do this. Again, it's about accessibility and arming you with the right knowledge and directions to replicate it at home. And a bespoke cocktail is one of those finishing touches that is so amazing. Whether you're welcoming your guests in the door with a cranberry spiced Aperol spritz during the holidays, which is really a 5 ingredient cocktail, and the hardest thing you're doing is throwing some cranberry sauce into some sugar and water to create that simple syrup. But you're creating layers. You're creating easy layers of flavor to creating these floral centerpieces, which again, it's a formula in a way. You're using seasonal flowers, you're using a star flower. Let's say we're going to use peonies for the spring. And then we're supplementing with flowers that are more textural or colorful or adding additional sort of light and frothiness. And it's once you understand it, once you've made one or even two of these, you'll get it. It clicks because it's so much easier than you think. And you can create a floral centerpiece that if you went to a florist would cost you an arm and a leg. But for you, you just went to the local grocery store, or the local flower farmer, and you have something that is not only within your budget, but it is uniquely you. You made that, and your guests will realize you made that, and you are unique in your creativity. And that's the part that I really love and that I want to emphasize with all of this is that I can give you the tools, but everything you touch is unique to you. So why not celebrate it?
Can you share a personal anecdote about a memorable entertaining experience?
Do you want a funny one or a very successful one?
A very that's hard to choose. A very successful one.
All right, a very successful one. Um, you know, I love throwing parties where it's multi-generational. And I did a spring party where we had probably like 15 adults. There must have been at least 10 little children running around. And it was pandemonium. It was absolute chaos. And I loved every moment of it. And we served roasted chicken and roasted potatoes with herbs and a flourless chocolate cake with vanilla whipped cream and edible flowers and a lemon gin flora, which is this gorgeous lemon based gin sour with a raw egg froth. And in the midst of all of this amazing noise and eating and drinking and flowers, everyone was quiet at the table once they were eating. And to me, when you have that moment of even the children being quiet, that is a success. There were no leftovers that night. Granted that I caught several little children climbing on each other to get to the cookies I also had made, and they were wandering around like chipmunks, and I couldn't be angry. I mean, that's
Yeah.
showing some ingenuity.
Yeah.
Good forethought.
Yeah. Kids are just being kids.
Yeah, but it's that love to me that's a successful dinner party. Always I do a breakdown or a rundown at the end of the night of what worked, what didn't work, things that I can figure out, almost like a stage manager in a way.
Yeah.
But the self-satisfaction of knowing that you created something extraordinary for that, 2 or 3, 4 hours, it's an amazing feeling.
The book that you published through Schiffer Publishing is really stunning. There are parts of it that just look like something out of a gorgeous painting.
Mhm.
And I mean, I knew from the blog that, you had a lot of talent in the photography realm with this. Like your blog is very beautiful and you have a lot of really good photos in it. In the book, though, you really take it to another level, and some of the work is exceptional. Did you work with the publisher? Like, how did this come about? The visual aspect of it come about in your interactions with the publisher?
Schiffer was very gracious to me between the concept, the layout, and the photographs. They let me run with it. I would bring what I thought, my ideas to them, and they just courageously, I want to say, because they didn't know who I was or what I did, always said yes. So I had the ultimate creative freedom. And what's unique about our book, and I say our, is because my husband, Jonathan Ross, physician by day and photographer whenever I need him, did all the photographs for this book. And he does take all the photographs for my blog and social media. And where he is behind the lens creating these amazing photographs that make you feel like you're sitting down to the plate versus like a top down or a straight on, which is a hallmark of our work. We are also known for our light and bright photography with lush floral elements, and that would be my side of things. So I do all of the food styling, the table setup and decor, the color story, color theory, recipe development, and writing. And we are a great team. I can't say that we've ever really disagreed about what we're doing. We may have different points of view about angle or perhaps garnish or something like that with suggestions to each other. But between the two of us, because he's very technical, because his job by day is very technically intense, and I'm the creative, being a former ballet dancer, it's a really nice marriage of skills.
I got to ask, how do you balance the demands of being a mother, a blogger, a TV personality, which we could also talk about, and now a cookbook author? What strategies do you use to manage your time effectively?
I have to laugh. It's a work in progress. Um, It's a great question. So I currently have a 14-year-old, a 12-year-old, and an 8-year-old, all little boys.
Hmm.
And they have grown up with this blog, with me doing all of this work, and they have definitely reaped the benefits of eating and taste testing. I always tease that during the recipe development phase of the cookbook, they lived on nothing but decadent desserts and peanut butter and jam sandwiches for 6 months. It was either all or nothing. So my balance is you take on what you can when you can. So when I started the blog, I had babies. And oftentimes that meant only being able to work 1 or 2 days a week. And then as they got older, I was able to take on more responsibilities for my work. But then, I would have a step back caring for an elderly and sick parent. And, like life gets, you have to balance life as you
Yeah.
go, and my husband works very intensive hours. So, um, it was sort of like being a mom and a half, a job and a half, because I was a food blogger, a food stylist, a writer, but also mom. And also, I am very much ingrained in my community work. I'm very much volunteering all the time. So for me, it's about finding your priorities and never leaving your interests at the door. And I think that's something that for all of us who are, whether we're parents, not parents, whether we're caregivers, whether we're spouses, partners, whatnot, it's always reflecting back on what brings you joy and balancing that. with the work that must be done. So I do it tenderly, hoping for a lot of grace. So far, so good. I let my children definitely help with this book. It was amazing. My youngest son's hands are actually in the book. He was holding the latkes for me because I needed a small set of hands.
Nice.
And he had the best nails at the time because, again, little boys. Um, and my eldest son was my grip. He was actually paid to lug around my props and to hold diffuser screens and learn how to take pictures. My middle son likes to food style with me, as well as my younger son. So it's about bringing your kids, your people into your interests just as much as and giving to them as they're giving to you.
Your book and the blog both speak to entertaining and cooking really wonderful meals. Now, this week we have Thanksgiving coming up. Do you have any tips for our listeners this week, now that Thanksgiving is nigh, to kind of help them get through the holiday?
Absolutely. So Thanksgiving is my very favorite holiday. It's like the Super Bowl for me. And my best tip is to menu plan. So for me, when I sit down to menu plan, I identify, similar to like how I arrange flowers and identifying a star flower, I'm going to identify the star or two-star dishes that I'm going to really put a lot of emphasis on. Those are going to be the ones that require a little bit more time, a little bit more attention. And then I'm going to supplement with easy to prepare, but very, very flavorful side dishes or desserts. So for this Thanksgiving, I'm focusing on my brined turkey that will then roast the day of. So I know that 2 or 3 days in advance, I have to defrost the turkey, get the brine together, put it in its cooler, set it aside. I also want to make a really terrific dessert this year. I'm making a pumpkin cheesecake, which does require a bit more effort. I'm going to use a chai infused whipped cream. This is a new recipe I'm working on. And I know that's going to take effort. So understanding that, I then look at my menu and say, oh, all right, so what else can I make that I can do ahead of time? A New England style whole berry cranberry sauce with orange and maple syrup, which is in the book. It's one of my favorites. That can be made up to a week ahead of time and stored in the fridge. The same with a sweet potato casserole with a pecan streusel. That can be made up to 2 days in advance and then cooked the day of. It's about understanding recipes, how long they take, and where in a recipe you can pause and then finish the cooking the day of. So everything is very fresh and very tasty. Sourdough stuffing with turkey sausage and cranberries and fresh herbs. That can be easily made the day of, or you can toast the bread 2 days beforehand and just put it in a little Ziploc bag and keep it out on your counter. It's understanding flavors, it's understanding the seasonality of your ingredients and their shelf life, but also how much time and effort you want to spend in the kitchen versus out with your people.
Jessie-Sierra, I want to ask you, now that the book is out, what's next for you?
Well, I'll tell you my big picture dream. I would love to start a television series, a stand and stir, as they say. I want to bring back the cooking shows of the ilk that I loved growing up and who inspired me. Julia Child, the black and white Julia Child episodes on PBS, where I grew up in Boston. She was one of my biggest inspirations. Martha Stewart, Ina Garten, all of these people, these powerful women that broke barriers and brought a generation back into the kitchen, not because they needed to be in the kitchen, but because they wanted to be in the kitchen. And I want to inspire another generation of not only women, but men, young people, anyone who is interested in creating food that nourishes and inspires and really, I mean, the creativity you can find in food, drink, and flowers is just, it's never ending. So that's what I'm hoping. Those are the steps I'm taking. If you know anyone out there, I'm available. I have been fortunate enough to, for the last 5 years, to appear on NBC and PBS and CBS on lifestyle shows several times a month. So I'm an old hand at that. But what's next? We're working on conceptualizing another book.
Nice.
We've already been asked for it, and continuing to educate and to bring, culinary inspiration to those of us outside the culinary world. But yes, I am looking for a TV show. That's what my next big adventure is.
I have no doubt that will come to pass. It seems like a real natural thing.
Thank you so much.
Jesse's here. I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I want to let listeners know we have links to purchase the book through the blog, through the, sorry, let me say that again. I'll cut this out. I want to let our listeners know that we have links to the purchase the book in the bio. We also have links to the blog as well. Jessie-Sierra, thanks for being on the podcast and happy Thanksgiving.
It was such a pleasure. Happy Thanksgiving.
Time we have left today on the Well-Seasoned Librarian podcast. I would like to thank my guest, Jessie-Sierra Ross, for being on the podcast. Are you eager to get her book for yourself or someone else this holiday gift-giving season? It's the gift that really keeps on giving. You can purchase the book through our link in the bio or through better bookstores. We have more podcast episodes in store for you this week. Until then, I'll see you at the library.